Good morning. Welcome to the Dynasty Playbook, Dynasty FF's dedicated podcast. I'm your host, Drew. You can find me on Reddit at EAF_Marine and on Twitter at DrewDotsonNFL. With me are my co-hosts, Tyler and Scott. You can find Tyler on Reddit at Barrels and Scott on Reddit at Stewie35. Back for another day, even though we're kind of late, guys. How are you doing today?
Doing wonderful. Trying to wake up.
I'm awesome, man. Any day off is a good day.
That's right. You guys are off for like a real holiday. I'm off for Mardi Gras because I live in the good part of the South.
It's not even a thing. It's not even real.
Yeah, it is. It's because there's a lot of Catholics in this part, and they believe it's real.
Oh.
I used to get off of like real public school for Mardi Gras living in Louisiana. Yeah, we'd get off for more than half the week for Mardi Gras.
You can't even go do anything for Mardi Gras. Nothing fun, at least.
I mean, parades are fun, and then when you're older, you can go to parades and get hammered, which is even more fun, because then you don't care about the parades.
Because you realize the parades aren't really that fun.
You don't hear me arguing with you. Parades suck. Whatever. Go ahead and move into our week in review. We're a week late on this point, but Josh Gordon got suspended for getting a little drunk celebrating the end of the season. How do we feel about this, guys? How are we feeling about Gordon right now?
Well, I think that I read that letter or note or whatever you want to call it that he wrote, and so, I mean, it's frustrating to see him make another mistake, but it sounds like he's got his life a little bit more on track than I originally believed. So I'm not losing hope in him. If I own him, I'm holding him. If I don't, I'm probably not buying him unless he's going for ridiculously cheap. Basically how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of got to be at the point where if you got him, you hold him. If you don't have him, you're not touching him. I'm somewhat on the. I agree with you where it seems like he's got his life a little more under control, but at the same time, it's kind of looks like a PR move, which he kind of needs to do because he looks like the worst drug addict the NFL's had since LT. But Tyler, what do you think?
I'm not surprised. I mean, it's just a ticking time bomb with Josh Gordon. I had several shares of Gordon. I managed to sell off all but one, and about 2 days before the news broke, I turned down a late first straight up for Gordon. I was drinking the Kool-Aid again. Wished I wasn't. Yeah, like I said, I'm not surprised. If I could sell him for anything right now, I'd just get rid of him just to be done with the headache, to be honest.
Yeah, is he in any of your guys' top 100 anymore?
Not mine.
I mean, maybe right on the border, depending on how far into a rebuild I was. If I'm just starting a rebuild on a team, I could see grabbing him and hoping that in 2 years he's got his crap together. Peaking at that point again, and he should be peaking right now.
Yeah, that's right about where I am, Scott. He's right on that border. Like if I'm getting him, 9th, 10th round of a startup, and if we're doing them with startup with guys that know what they're doing, the cupboards are kind of bare at that point. I could see taking him, but I'm not going into it with a whole lot of hope. Not really a whole lot else to say about it until, he's going to appeal it, but chances are that's not going anywhere. So we can go ahead and move on from that. I say the Combine is next week, but I wrote that note when we were supposed to do this show, during the weekend. The Combine's going to be starting this week. Feels like it came on a lot quicker this year than it did in years past. Draft season is upon us. So I wanted to know, what are what are 3 things, 3 players you're most looking forward to seeing numbers, just seeing in general from this combine, Scott?
For me, I try to not take too much away from combine numbers and try not to rely on those too much in my evaluations. So, for the most part, I'll just use it to separate players that I already think are pretty close, players I've already watched film on, and I'm undecided between 2 guys. I'll go ahead and look at the combine stats at that point, but still, I only take that as so much. I mean, you could be that workout warrior that gets those great combine stats, and then you just don't have the on-field wits, or you just don't perform the same when you are on the field, or something like that, and it's not going to be the same. So I try to take combine stats with a grain of salt and rely on film more than anything.
That's fair. And there are a lot of guys who put like way too much focus on like 40 times, especially when there are players that spend their entire offseason practicing to do the 40. That skews it for me. But, I like going into it looking, what is this guy going to weigh in at? Has this player's weight been getting reported wrong? Look at Ty Montgomery. Ty Montgomery had been getting reported at like 6'2" for the last 2 or 3 years. He got into the Senior Bowl. What was it, 5'11"? And that's a pretty significant difference. One of the guys' weight I'm interested in seeing is Dorsett out of Miami. I want to see if he can weigh in with some real man weight, because I'm serious. He looks like he's got a real shot at taking the fastest 40 time in the combine. If he doesn't take the fastest, he's gonna be right up there. This guy's a speedster. If he can show up and have a solid build to him, this is a guy I'm very interested in drafting. Tyler, some of the guys you might be interested in, just seeing anything out of him at the combine.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon's going to be a big one for me. I want to see how he does in the pass route drills. How does he look running routes? How does he look catching the ball? Does he look natural? Does he look awkward? That's going to play a huge role in my final valuation of Melvin Gordon, because we just don't have a whole lot of looks at him in the third down games. So if he can look natural or good, even against air, that's going to be more than what we've seen out of him to this point. So I'm going to have my eyes on Melvin Gordon for sure.
That was my biggest one as well, because that's my biggest knock against Gordon at this point. And that's a guy we're going to discuss a whole lot more at a later point today. But that's going to be my main focus with the combine. Is I want to see Gordon catching the ball. I want to see how he is with his hands. I want to see how comfortable he is tracking the ball. There's so much of his game that even if you look at it, the games he caught balls in, he might as well have been catching them against air, considering the level of competition they were. Another guy I want to see the medical reports coming out about Todd Gurley, see how far he's coming along in his rehab. If he's looking to be on track or ahead of track, that's going to be, real good signs for me. Really, anything that comes out that's not negative for me will be, that's what I want to hear. As long as it's not negative, he's still my 101. Anyone else on your list, Tyler?
Kind of interested in Funchess. Kind of see what he looks like. At least everything I'm hearing to this point is that he's going to go with the wide receivers. Not so much worried about his flatline speed, but I like to see the agility drills, the cone drills, some of the route running drills, see how he's going to translate to the NFL as a true split end. He's a guy that really interests me because, I like the big wide receivers. So I just like to see, how is he in the hips? Does he transition well? So that's another guy I definitely want to keep my eye on. Very interested to see how he looks compared to the other guys.
Yeah, that's a good one. That'll be very interesting because he's shown issues with fluidity in his hips, and if he can sink his hips real well in the agility drills, that'll be a real positive sign for him. You guys have anybody else you want to comment on before we move on?
All good.
All right, let's
That does it for me.
party. Let's move on to our college player discussion for the week, and let's start it off with the guy we were just talking about. It's Melvin Gordon, junior running back out of Wisconsin. For anybody who's been living under a rock, this guy's going to be 22 at the start of the 2015 season, which is nice. He's a nice young running back, which is something the NFL hasn't always been giving us. And Tyler, I'm going to go ahead and let you start us off. What do you see out of him? What do you like? What do you dislike?
I mean, there's not a whole lot to not like about the guy. Of course, I'm going to assume that we're all playing PPR because us three play together. We all play in PPR leagues. So in a standard league, Melvin Gordon's going to take on a different role. He's obviously, you're not going to knock the pass catching stuff nearly as much. He's just a nice player. He runs low, nice pad level. The first tackler hits him in the thighs, that guy's going to bounce off 9 times out of 10. It's not going to bring him down. He moves the pile going forward. He does have a little bit of a tendency to dance behind the line when the hole's not right there, but that's not enough to make me not put him as, the number 2 back in this class. Like I said, the big things are the unknowns, and it's all the third down work. How's he going to do against the pass rush? How's he going to do on routes? Even most of the tape that I watched, he ran quite a few routes, but he just kind of half-ass runs out there and gives up on the route because he knows the ball's not going to him. So like I said, the big thing is just the question marks. It's the third down work. That's the only thing I don't like about the guy is what I don't know.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Those are my biggest knocks are the question marks. You comment about his, that first guy hit him in the thighs, not being able to take him down. I noticed that happens a lot more with, they'll grab him and he'll drag him for a couple yards, but I rarely see him break that tackle completely. And that to me is somewhat of an issue, not a huge mark, because the fact that he's still dragging him and still picking up yards is great for the NFL, but that slightly limits his big playability in the NFL, which in the long run is not even a real negative mark. It's just it's one of those things you take note of, because it comes down to his strength. He does run with an excellent pad level. That's part of the reason why he's able to drag these guys, because he keeps his body low. He has excellent vision behind the line, which I think is part of the reason he dances, because he's patient, but almost to the point of being too patient. Because he can see the play developing, and he's waiting for it to be perfect. And especially playing behind Wisconsin's line, sometimes it gets to be perfect. So he might have issues initially in the NFL, because he's going to have to learn to play with tighter holes. But if you watch some of his games, he's pretty good at getting through those tight holes. He's good at getting small through the hole when he has to. He has surprisingly good balance. I say surprisingly, not like I expect him to have bad balance. It's just, for anybody, it's surprising. And I'm one of those guys that, if you've been listening to this, I've kind of knocked Melvin Gordon a little bit. Like, I'm not touching him. I'm not touching him as, the first player off my board in a draft, or the second player off my board. But this guy's one of the best running backs in this draft. He's a stud. If he can show in the combine that he can track the ball, he can catch the ball easily, that changes everything. And I'm gonna have to go back to square one. So I tried to go into this with fresh eyes and not have these negative biases in mind, and the guy's just impressive. There's nothing about his game that's really negative. And Scott, I want to hear your thoughts on him.
I enjoyed watching Gordon. I agree with a lot of things you guys said. I think that obviously in our PPR league it's going to be a little bit harder to take him, just because we're so unsure of how he's going to evaluate as far as being a pass catching back or even just being out there in third down in general. So that's definitely one of my bigger worries as far as that goes. But I think he does a great job of keeping low, and he bounces off of tackles. I agree that he doesn't often break a tackle. No guy really ever has him wrapped up, and then he pulls away from that. But he does a good job of just getting as low or lower than the defender gets. And when they come and try to hit him, they bounce off his thigh or they bounce off his shoulder pad or something. He seems to bounce out wide, and then all of a sudden he has all this speed from the collision and gets out and gets 5-7 extra yards. So I definitely like the way he runs. I agree that sometimes he can be really patient, which is good, but sometimes overly patient where he's expecting a hole to open up where it's just never going to happen. So lots of interesting things to see from him. I really enjoyed watching the Ohio game where he didn't have a lot of room just to see, because I feel like that would be the closest to an NFL team that you're going to be seeing. Just getting dominated on the line. That's stuff that happens to NFL teams, especially if you go early in a draft. That's not going to help you go to a very good team with a great line or anything like that. So I think that he's going to do well in the NFL. Definitely my biggest knock is going to be the pass catching, just because it's so unknown. I agree with Tyler that he seemed to give up on a lot of his routes. I don't know if he was the 7th, 8th read or something and just never was going to get a chance, or if he gave up, and because he was known for giving up, QB didn't look at him. I think he's someone I'm still going to take early in my rookie drafts, but there is probably 1 or 2 wide receivers I'd draft before him, and Gurley I'm obviously having over him as well.
All right, yeah, I absolutely agree about it. It was nice seeing him against Ohio State, seeing him against that high-level competition. Same with the LSU game from the beginning of the season. That's one of my favorite things, is seeing these high-level prospects go against high-level competition, because you can really get a good feel for how their abilities translate. Tyler, you had anything you wanted to add before we moved on?
No, I think we hit it pretty well. I mean, like you said, the dude's a stud. Nobody's arguing that he's not a stud running back. It's just, how's he going to translate to third down? Is he going to be a 2-down back, or is he going to be a 3-down back? That's where the difference is going to lie.
Exactly. I think more of us are just worried that he's going to be more of a stud NFL back than he's going to be a stud fantasy back. And we're going to go ahead and move on to our, our under the radar prospect, who, after Mel Kiper's mock draft isn't so under the radar, is Brashad Perriman, who's I'm assuming I'm saying that right. I should assume I say it wrong, because I say them all wrong. The junior wide receiver out of UCF. Mel Kiper just mocked him at number 15 in his latest mock draft, which seems a little insane to me. This guy's going to be 21 at some point in 2015. Not sure when, because I can't find a birth date. I just found a relative age and a birth year, which is really annoying. But after the combine, we'll get a solid birth date on him. And Scott, I'll go ahead and let you start us off on him. What are your thoughts?
All right. So it seemed to me like he didn't run a lot of routes, which was pretty frustrating to watch. He ran a lot of slants, he ran a lot of goes, and he ran a lot of comebacks, or just stops, whatever you want to call it. Often he didn't actually come back for the ball. I was not very impressed. I thought that he caught a lot of passes with his body. Like, he'd put his hands out there, but it would like either slip through his hands, or he'd bring his hands back in and let his body kind of help him rebound and catch the ball, which I don't like to see at all, especially from a big wide receiver. There's a couple plays where he even jumped too early for a jump ball, and there was plays where he just didn't seem to give effort when the ball was a little bit short to try and maybe even stop the defender from having a shot at the interception. But there was good things as well. I thought that he was very quick in short distances, which was good. He had the way he got off of press coverage was kind of weird, though. And he has a little hop jump thing that he likes to do, and I didn't often see the corners even getting his hands on him, so I'm not sure if he does it to keep the hands off or what that was about. But he's definitely really quick. He's got the size, that prototypical size that you want in a big wide receiver. And like I said, his catching was actually good. He did a good job at catching most of the passes. I just didn't like the fact that he used his body a lot. So this isn't somebody that I'm going to have probably even in my first 2 rounds as far as a rookie mock. I'd have to look at all those later guys to really decide whether or not I'd take him in the third, but I could see him coming in the third, hoping that there's a team that can kind of work on his issues there. He has lots of ability. He's still got the size, like I said. He's got the speed for sure. He seemed to burn corners almost on a consistent basis without even having to do any sort of juke move or anything. He just ran down the sideline and could beat him 9 times out of 10, so that was good to see. But definitely someone that I'm not very excited about. I was kind of disappointed seeing how early he went in that mock draft and then actually watching the film myself.
Yeah. I think the route name you were looking for earlier was dig route. But I agree with you that weird hop step he does at the beginning of his routes that would normally be a knock on his route running because it allows the wide receiver to kind of get a jump on him, and it's going to throw off timing with his QB. Which, if he's getting with somebody who's anal about it, like Peyton Manning, he's just not going to see the ball. The body catching was something that was one of the first things I noted on. And y'all have been listening to me for any amount of time. Dave and I used to knock on that all the time to the point of nausea. He does have the prototypical size. I think that's part of the reason so many people are big on him is because he's 6'3", he's 215. He's got that size you want. He's going to be quick. He's probably going to run low 4.5s, high 4.4s. For that size, that's pretty damn good. A lot of the issues he had this season were he was dealing with a highly inaccurate quarterback. You see him a lot of time adjusting to the ball because it's thrown behind him by a decent amount, and he adjusted to that fairly well. And he had fairly good body control to be able to still go behind him and catch the ball. When it's thrown to him, and he can actually get it in stride, he's fairly good after the catch. I'm still not terribly excited about him. I actually kind of hope he goes in the first round, so people will take him in the first round over a wide receiver I'd rather have, or a running back I'd rather have. But I can see him as a guy I'd take in the late second. For some reason, Dorsett and Stephon Diggs are already off the board. This is a guy I could see myself looking at. But I'm still not terribly high on him. Tyler, what do you got?
Yeah, I hate to just turn it into the agreement hour, but Scott just picked off everything that I had written down about this kid. The hop skip where he's coming off the line, the lack of routes that he ran. One thing I noticed that you guys didn't really touch on, he's a little bit clumsy in his feet. I noticed it quite a few times. He makes the catch, and he looks like he's fixing to get upfield, get some yards, and he just kind of trips almost. And a lot of that's due to the inaccurate throws like what Drew hit on, but he's just really, really raw. As far as what I could tell, I think he probably has the potential to be a nice NFL wideout, and I didn't see that mock. 15th overall is insanity. I can't see that happening at all unless he just blows somebody out of the water in the combine. But I say he's a decent looking prospect, but raw,
Yeah, and it's not even Kuiper. There's multiple places that are talking about him making it into the first round. Granted, I would rather have him in the first round over someone like Devin Street, who is starting to consistently make it into the first round conversation. I think he's probably got more versatility to his game than Street will have with some work.
You mean Smith, the kid from Ohio State?
Yeah, Devin Smith. I'm thinking Street,
okay.
The guy who went to Dallas.
I got you.
I know that Street's one of your boys.
I'm souring by the day.
You had so much hope last offseason. I remember that.
You can't beat out Terrence Williams.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else we wanted to hit on before we move on?
No, I think I'm solid.
All right. Good deal. Go ahead and move on to our submitted questions for the week. This one came to us last week, and we wanted to devote a little more time to it because we knew it was going to take a good bit of time. This comes from Wolf Nipple Chips, who might be my favorite username on the subreddit. Rookies and more rookies. I'd love a 2-round mock draft to see what people think about the second round specifically. Where do you see the talent drop off? So we're just going to do a straight up second round mock, 2-round mock. After that, we'll kind of assess where we see the talent drop off, and we're gonna just rotate it. I'll take the first pick. Tyler will take the second pick. Scott will take the third pick, and I'm gonna start off with my number one guy. It's Todd Gurley. I think he's far and away the best running back in this class, and I think he has the most upside. There are a bunch of good wide receivers in this class, but I think Todd Gurley is by far the best running back, and I'm not really worried about his injury. I think the ACL injury is not what it used to be. That's all I got to say. Tyler, what do you got?
2 overalls, Amari Cooper. I mean, he's pro-ready day one. I don't know if he has this crazy high Julio Jones ceiling, but I think he's going to have a relatively high floor, so it's a pretty it's an easy pick. No-brainer.
And with the third pick, I will go ahead and take Kevin White.
Scott, what do you got?
He's faster than you.
So I go ahead and get wide receiver out of West Virginia, Kevin White.
I like it. I'm a big White fanboy. And this one's tough for me, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and snipe Tyler and take Jalen Strong here. Yep, happened. I like Strong. We've talked about it. I like Strong over Parker. I considered Gordon here, but I'm going to go ahead and go with the wide receiver. Tyler, what do you got?
5 overall, I'm taking Gordon. We knocked out my top 4. There's no way I'm taking Devontae Parker before Gordon, so this one's just that's just what it's going to be. At 5 overall, I'm not going to take him before then, but I'm really comfortable taking him at number 5.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I have Gordon 4 or 5. But since you guys took him now, I'm gonna have to go ahead and get the other guy. Tyler mentioned Devontae Parker.
Well, I'm glad you took him, Scott, so we don't have to watch him fall down the board, because Tyler and I would have played chicken to see how far he would have dropped. Here, I'll go ahead and take my next running back, my RB3, and that's Jay Ajayi. I could have. I'm flip flopping with him and Yeldon every day, but kind of from the beginning of the offseason, Ajayi has been my number 3. I think he offers a lot of upside, especially in PPR leagues. I think he's got 70, 80 reception a season upside. What do you got, Tyler?
I'm going to take Funchess. I actually had Funchess at 7 and Ajayi at 8, so, it's another pretty robotic pick for me. All right, Scott, you're up.
All right, I think that leaves me also with another wide receiver. Seems like I wanted to go a couple more running backs, but, you guys didn't give me anybody yet, so I'm going to go ahead and go with Dorial Green-Beckham. I think he's a pretty obvious choice at this point. One of the last top-end receivers, in my opinion, in this draft.
You know what? I won't argue with you at all there. I've seen him go as high as 4, and I think I'm just a little gun shy after all the Josh Gordon stuff. I'm not going to argue with him talent-wise. He belongs right up there, but the character issues are a huge concern for me. And I'm glad I went ahead and waited on Yeldon, because I can go ahead and get him here. Let me go ahead and get my Yeldon. After really digging into the tape on him, I've been been pleasantly surprised. I'm pretty excited about him, and I hope I can get him this late in drafts for my playoff teams. And we'll move on to Tyler.
I think I'm going to make the first reach. I'm going to take Aguilar here. I've been digging more into this kid and watching more film on him. I know we spent a lot of time on him a few weeks ago. I'm perfectly cool with him at the back end of the first. I think that's where he's going to end up going. So I'm great with him in this slot.
It's not that much of a reach. I thought about him over Yeldon just now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a pretty good pick. He was actually a person I was going to take. So let's see here. I think that leaves me with. I'll go with Duke Johnson.
All right. I like it. I think I'm going to go ahead and reach too, and I'm going to go with go Philip Dorsett. That's, it's kind of a boomer bust thing, and I know Tyler wasn't going to take him because he's about 6 inches too short to be a Tyler wide receiver. But I've been more and more impressed the more I watch him, and he flashes the kind of upside I want to see. So Tyler, who you got next?
I'm going to take Tevin Coleman. The tape has definitely exposed some parts of his game, but the dude is crazy explosive. We've said a lot about how the big plays have kind of skewed his numbers, but the fact is he's reeling off these monster runs. So I think the upside is going to be nice for this kid.
That's fair.
All right. Well, now most of the people that I really wanted are gone, so I'm a little bit less well versed in most of these names here. But I'll go with a pretty familiar player, Sammy Coates. So I'll go ahead and take.
Gotcha. I'm not as biggest fan of Coates. He's kind of that deep threat, athletic. Nothing else to his game I really like, but
yeah, he seems like a Torrey Smith almost.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. And we're gonna go ahead and take a guy. I'm gonna go ahead and take a guy that I'm surprised how far he's been falling, and that's Amir Abdullah. I think this guy could easily carve out a 3-down role for himself somewhere.
Good pick. I actually totally overlooked him in my my grouping here. I like it.
All right, on to Tyler.
All right, I'm going to take David Johnson. This kid, I'm starting to get one of my man crushes on this kid. I mean, he's big, and he is an excellent receiver, a really good receiver. I could see him actually coming in as a running back and lining up in the slot some. He's a kid that I'm really starting to grow on, so easy pick for me.
I like it.
All right, so I know a lot of people wouldn't do this at this point, but for me, this is right around
quarterback.
Second round, and I'm starting to look quarterback at this point. I think it's a good time to take one of those two top guys. And personally, I'm going to take Mariota just for his mobility. I think that he offers a higher upside sooner, and so I think that's where I'd go with this pick, Marcus Mariota.
Fair enough. I'm going to go ahead and break our next positional cherry, and I'm going to take Max Williams. Tight ends turned into kind of a positional wasteland lately, and I think he offers a fair amount of upside, and I like him here in the middle of the second. That's about the point where I'd be looking at drafting a tight end, especially with, the pace they develop at. So, on to Tyler.
There are a couple guys I'm looking at here, but I'm going to put up the guy that posted massive numbers in Justin Hardy. I mean, I think he caught about 1,000 balls in his career at ECU. That's not an accident. So he's a kid that I'm definitely starting to come around on quite a bit.
I like it.
Awesome. All right. So without saying too much and ruining a little bit of our talk for later, I'm going to go ahead and take someone that I just recently found, which will be Vince Mailey, I believe is how you say his name.
Huh.
Something like that.
All right.
I enjoyed watching him today, so go ahead and take him there.
I like it. A little bit of dissenting opinion. And this will be our last pick each. I'm going to go ahead and finish this out with a guy who's been on my board for, I don't know, since he was a freshman. We're going to go with Stephon Diggs out of Maryland. I know Tyler and I have been in private messaging back and forth since the offseason started, kind of circle jerking about him. I'm hoping he has a nice little showing at the combine and he gets some hype going, goes in a decent draft pick.
Yeah, I like Diggs. That's kind of when I said I was choosing between two guys. I'm looking at Hardy and Diggs, both profiles somewhat similarly, but I like both of them. I'm going to take Mike Davis out of South Carolina. I think he's just going to be one of those slow and steady wins the race kind of guys. He reminds me of PT. That's the guy he reminds me of, and we know how useful PT's been in PPR formats for a long time. So nothing great, nothing explosive, but I think he's going to be a NFL running back for a number of years.
Absolutely, he's going to be a solid pick, and I like that there's going to be something solid like that there at the end of the second.
Definitely. Another good pick. Trying to see who would I like for my last pick here. No, it's tough to stay away from those quarterbacks since those two are so high. But I think I'm going to go with a guy that I think is a little bit of a long shot. I think normally I'd take him a little bit later, but I'll go ahead and take here Ty Montgomery. Go with the speedster.
I like it. If I had had one more pick in the second round, Ty would have been my pick. This was a guy going into 2015 I would have taken into the first, but he kind of had a shitty showing this season. So,
I like
Tyler,
Montgomery,
where do you...
especially if we're in return yard leagues, which I know you and us three play in one league where we count return yards, and Montgomery is a beast on kick returns. Just an animal. So, sorry to jump in there. Just wanted to throw that in.
Nah, you're good. Tyler, where do you see the talent drop off in these first two rounds?
I think we had a pretty, depending on where you're at Devontae Parker, after that top six, it started to get a little muddy, for sure. Then you start looking at Funchess, Ajayi, Coleman, Aguilar, guys like that. So that's my big tier drop. And really, I mean, we just knocked off a bunch of solid players. I've got like 5 names written down that we didn't even pick off yet. So the draft's going to be a nice draft up, through 3-4 rounds. We're going to be able to find solid offensive players, I think. But top 6 is pretty cut and dry for me.
Yeah, I think there's two solid tier drop offs, and that's after the top 6 and after the top 12. I think the top 6 is pretty cut and dry, and then that whole next top 6 is that would have been my next top 6. DGB he's a guy I'm going to be hesitant to draft, but talent-wise, there's no way he's not in there. So, I mean, either we're all just in the same mindset, or that's pretty much how the tiers are going to be going. Scott, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel the same. Those 6, some might even put the 7, one more guy in there, depending on who you really like. I know some people have man crushes, as we like to call it, on players like Funchess or Yeldon or Beckham and all those guys, Aguilar even. So depending on how much you like one of those guys, I could see them slipping into your top tier with the rest of them. But I think those top 6 there are definitely going to be going top 6. The order could be switched around. I can see Cooper going a little bit higher and stuff like that. But I think after that, it starts to fall off. And then even after the first round, I think there's still a good amount of guys that you can get that just don't have quite the same hype as everybody else, though.
Yeah, we might get some hate mail on letting Tevin Coleman fall to the second. There are some hardcore man crushes there. There are people talking about him at like 104, and I mean, do what you want to do. That's on you, but I don't see it. Um, Anything else? Any other notes we wanted to hit on about this before we move on?
All right. Well, sounds like we're all good. So I'm going to go ahead and start us off with the next question here. Next submitted question from Beacon Bucks. If you guys could talk about the Packers wide receiver situation with Cobb and Adams. How much money does Green Bay have? How much is Cobb's contract going to cost them? What do you guys think of Adams if Cobb leaves? What do you guys think of Adams if Cobb stays? And thanks, guys. Show gets better every week. Good job. So we'll go ahead and start that off with Tyler. Why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts on Adams and Cobb and that situation in Green Bay?
Well, obviously Adams' value is wholly tied to whether Cobb stays or goes. This kind of reminds me of the Lynch situation in Seattle, where y'all just assumed that Lynch was going to leave. And we've all pretty much assumed that Cobb is going to leave, at least up until the last few months. As I'm looking at it, looks like Green Bay is going to have quite a bit of cap room. The only two teams I really see that might make a push for Cobb and blow something out of the water is Oakland, maybe Cleveland. Green Bay still has to sign Balaga, Tremont Williams. They've got a few other role players that they still have to sign, but I think Cobb's going to get offered somewhere in the range that what Jordy got offered, which I think was like four-year, $40 million. So I think Green Bay's going to offer him up, and it's going to take something. Somebody's going to have to come in and just make Cobb an offer he can't refuse. It is my thinking anyway. Drew, what do you feel about it?
I've been starting to come around on the idea of Cobb staying in Green Bay. With the cap situation there, they can afford to keep him. They've got, like you said, 25 to 30 million, depending on what the cap adjustment is with this year. They rarely bring in outside free agents, especially high cost free agents. And they don't really have a lot of big name guys they need to keep. Even if they wanted to look at extensions, there's not any big name guys in 2016 they need to extend. Unless you count like AJ Hawk, who I don't see them giving a real big extension to. I disagree that Adams' value is attached to Cobb, though. I think Jordy Nelson is 29 going on 30. I think even if Cobb stays, Adams just becomes the heir to Nelson's throne. I think Adams is going to have value independent regardless because he plays with Aaron Rodgers, and he's going to get enough work in the passing game to be useful as a flex, 6-8 games out of the season if you need to use him for bye weeks or whatever. But I think even if Cobb resigns, I'm going out and I'm buying every share of Devontae Adams I can get. The day he resigns, I'm going out and sending out an offer in every league I don't have him in, because people are going to be freaking out, and it just means I'm going to have to play the waiting game. The difference between the situation with Lynch and the difference with Cobb is we've already seen more than enough out of Adams for me to be confident he's going to produce at the NFL level. It just means we're going to have to wait. And I'm more than comfortable waiting. If I can get him at a discount, then cool. I'll play the waiting game. It would suck, but it's looking more and more likely that that's what's going to have to happen. Scott, what are your thoughts?
Right, and I get that. I think. Oh, my bad.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking. I'm looking more along the lines of, and I guess I should have made it more clear. Like we're talking about a startup that we're going to run here in 3 or 4 months. Devontae Adams would be, in my opinion, if Cobb leaves, 4th rounder, or maybe 5th rounder. If Cobb stays, Are you really wanting to invest that high of a pick in a guy who may not have true fantasy relevance, week in, week out for 2 or 3 more years, which is very likely if Cobb resigns. I mean, James Jones did good work as Green Bay's 3, but like I said, when I'm looking at Adams, I'm looking at a guy that, I drafted him as a potential wide receiver 1, and I'm afraid that the return on that is going to take me a lot longer than what was anticipated. Was kind of the direction I was going with that.
That's fair. And I'm seeing him going like the 3rd of startups right now. And I would be more than comfortable taking him in the 5th or 6th of startups, knowing that I'm going to eventually get wide receiver 1 return on that investment.
All right. Well, I'm not a fanboy of Adams like Drew is, but I do think he's a good wide receiver, and I think he's someone that easily has wide receiver 1 upside. But I agree that I think he's a little bit tied to Cobb's value. I like what Drew said, that he can still be the heir to Jordy Nelson's throne. I think that's very true. I don't know. If I have a team that I'm looking to have compete pretty soon here, I think I'm shying away a little bit from Adams, worrying about that. But I can see Green Bay re-signing Cobb. I can see that happening. I think that they're going to have to pay a little bit more than they'd like to in order to keep Cobb there. I think Cobb's been getting a little bit more hype towards the end of that season, this past season, and so I think that it's definitely going to cost him in that $10 million range. So as long as they're willing to pay him the same way they're paying Jordy, it should be absolutely fine for them to get him back. I think he wants to be there. He knows that he's got a really good situation, one of the best quarterbacks in the game right now, in Aaron Rodgers. So I could see them staying with him. And Adams, I think he could even excel in a wide receiver 3 role. He's quick. He can catch and run after the catch really well. So I definitely am not selling Adams by any means, but right now I'm not buying him for his wide receiver 1 potential. I'm probably buying him to fill in, like Drew said, for those flex spots on bye weeks and other items like that. That's pretty much where I have him right now.
I will agree in one point that he is top to Cobb, in that this is the first season that Cobb has played a full season as a starter. So I'm thinking Adams is going to get a decent amount of chances to start in the future. So that's pretty good for his value. I'd say that's pretty tied to Cobb. But I'm sure that's not what anyone meant, but I'm going to be a jerk.
Same idea, though. I mean, if Cobb's hurt, the same thing, him being gone, right? So.
Yep. I'm not huge on the idea of handcuffing wide receivers, but I think that's one of the situations where it's going to be more advantageous to do so.
Yeah, that would be a pretty good hedge. I mean, if you own Cobb, getting Devontae wouldn't be a bad move at all. And nobody owns more shares of Devontae Adams than I do, man. I was taking him ahead of Beckham 100% of the time last year in startups and rookie drafts, with the idea, thinking ahead, hey, Cobb's out of here. I'm going to pop this guy in my lineup every single week for the future. And maybe we will, maybe we won't, but I'm afraid that our gratification is going to be postponed with Devontae.
I did the same thing. All my Odell Beckham shares came from trading. All my Devontae Adams shares came from drafting ahead of Odell Beckham. So I'm in the same boat, bud. But yeah, we guys have anything else we want to hit on with that?
Think I'm all good.
I think we got it. So our next question comes from our good friend Sticky Z. Gut feeling on the Denver backfield in 2015 from the 2 Denver homers, Scott and I. And that other guy with the goatees. CJ's role to lose. Does Hillman have a sneaky shot? Monty Ball. And we're going to address this question under the assumption that Peyton returns, which coming out this week, it certainly looks like Peyton's coming back. So, Scott, what do you think about it?
I think that it is indeed C.J. Anderson's job to lose. I do think that they might start trying to play another back. Maybe Hillman, maybe Ball. I'm not sure how they feel in that situation. I think Hillman fits the running scheme that we're going to be employing a little bit better than Ball. But I definitely think that it's going to be C.J. Anderson's job to lose. I think he performed well. He showed heart. He showed drive. He showed that he will play even when the blocking is not good. He plays really great when the blocking is good. So I think that C.J. Anderson definitely has that on lock. I think it doesn't matter if it's Peyton or Osweiler behind center there, even though we're assuming Peyton returns in this situation.
I agree. I think this is Anderson's job to lose. I don't know. I don't really think that Hillman or Ball have that sneaky of a shot. I think if we wanted to choose a number 2 option for who's got the better odds to take over the backfield, it's going to be a running back that's not currently in Denver. I think for how does Brock Lobster impact the odds, I don't really think it makes much of a difference. I think the head coach makes much more of a difference in who takes it than either of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can agree that it's probably CJ's job to lose, but I think it's a lot murkier than both of you do. I thought Hillman looked fantastic when he got his opportunity this year. He had, 5 or 6 week run where he looked really, really good. And the fact that when Ball went down, Hillman assumed the role. That wasn't an accident. Either they truly thought Hillman was the better back, or Hillman had a better grasp of the playbook at that time, and CJ just wasn't ready. Something to that effect. Like I said, I'm just avoiding the situation at all costs. If I can't acquire that entire backfield, I'm going to deal whatever pieces I have because I just don't want anything to do with it. I could see this thing turning into 3 guys getting 8 touches a game. I could see it C.J. Anderson getting all the run. I could even see Monty Ball coming out of nowhere as the number 1 coming out of camp. So I just don't think it's that cut and dry. And, the Denver backfield just makes me nervous right now.
I agree. I think if you've got Hillman or Ball, you kind of just have to stand pat on them because they're not worth enough individually to trade. And if I've got CJ solely, I'm trading him. I'm trying to ride that value pony to the store. Go ahead.
I'd go ahead and I'd still stick with CJ personally. I love what I've seen out of him. I guess I'm kind of just a CJ fanboy, I guess, and I think that he has the most drive out of any of the backs in the backfield. What I like about him better than Hillman, because I think Hillman is the second best back in our backfield, or in Denver's backfield. I apologize. I don't play for a team, unfortunately, anymore. I used to. Never mind. Anyway, so I think Hillman's the second best back in Denver. I think that he played really well, like Tyler said, in that 5 or 6 week stretch. I wish we would have got to see more of him. I was really high on him when he was playing well. But C.J. Anderson just has that drive. He has the mental idea of what he needs to do to keep being great in the NFL. He's very driven, a very smart player. So I think because of that, I could see him holding down the running back 1 position coming into the start of the next season. As far as injuries go and how it's going to go throughout the season, I think that'll be a week by week or game by game thing. If Anderson's struggling, I could easily see them to turn to either other running back, but I think Anderson will start out at the beginning of the season, and if he continues to play the way he did at the end of this past season, he won't lose it.
Yeah, don't forget about Juwan Thompson either. He's still there to further muddy the waters. Big kid, huge kid. I could see him stealing some touchdowns. Sort of taking on the Mike Tolbert role, if you will.
Yeah, there's some rumblings of him and Virgil Green being our new fullbacks, so I really like Juwan Thompson as well.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of confusion, so unless you guys have anything else you want to add, we can move on.
I'm good.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to Umaro 900's question. It says, I don't know if you've got guys for tape review already, but there's been a lot of buzz about Rashad Perriman already. I think we've touched on him a fair amount. particularly, how do you think he compares to somebody like Vince Mail? And I think we'll go ahead and pass to Scott, who decided that he belonged in the top 2 rounds, and let him tell you why.
I really liked Vince Mail. He seemed to run good routes. It wasn't the cleanest routes, but I thought they were better than Perriman's routes were. I saw a couple routes that Perriman rounded off terribly, running corners and posts and routes like that, besides his 3 main ones that he loves to run. I noticed Mail ran a lot of routes, a lot of different routes, and I liked the way that he came back and attacked the ball on almost every catch, every play. Even coming across the middle, he was coming back to his quarterback, which lots of receivers aren't going to do because normally you're right behind those linebackers. So it's good to see that. Big knock is he seemed to drop the ball a lot when he would get hit trying to make a catch. He's trying to catch it with his hands, which is something I liked, but he definitely had a handful of drops in each game that I watched. So not super excited about him. If I could, actually get a little bit more research done. So busy lately that I might have taken somebody else over Mail, but I think he's definitely going to be a good receiver. I think he will need some time, though, to develop.
All right, I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Tyler.
I liked Mail. I mean, as a direct comp with Perriman, that actually lines up pretty well. I thought Mail was a better player. I thought he was more physical. I thought he was more polished. If I'm not mistaken, he's a redshirt senior, which may have something to do with that. He just looked like he had more of a man's body. He just looked like the better player to me. But would I be surprised if Perriman's the better receiver in 3 years? Not at all. But if I had to draft today, if somebody held a gun to my head and said you have to choose between Perriman and Mail, I'm going to take Mail.
I'm going to tell him to shoot.
Yeah.
I guess I'll be the dissenting opinion then, because I would have rather taken Perriman over the Mail. Not because I was particularly impressed with Perriman, but Mail seemed kind of like a jag to me. There wasn't anything that particularly impressed me about his game. He had a lot of concentration drops. He seemed to really get stuck on the line. He just overall he seemed to just not impress at all. There's nothing about his game that stood out. I've been listening to a lot of Josh Norris and Matt Waldman lately, and they talk about where a receiver wins, and I just didn't see anywhere where he particularly won. He did all right in a lot of aspects, but didn't do great in any aspect to me. So he's a guy that I'm not drafting in any of my drafts personally.
I like what you said there. Good in a lot, but not great. And I think that's something we got to keep in mind when we're doing our evaluations. The NFL isn't a bunch of really decent players. You can't just be really, really decent at everything you do and expect to excel in the NFL. You need to be great at something at least. Multiple things makes you a really great player. So I think that's a fair statement in saying he's good at a lot of things, but not great at stuff. So I like it.
All right.
I believe that brings us to our next question, unless anyone had anything else they wanted to say.
No.
This one comes from Only My Couch Pulls Out, which I'd say is a pretty close second to the other username we read off earlier. How do you best evaluate the value of rookie picks? I'm relatively new and can't seem to value the 1.01 pick compared to a top 20 player or even a top 25. In my eyes, give me a current top 25 guy any day. I won't want to change that, but it's been a struggle. Tyler, let's go ahead and start off with you. How are you valuing your early draft picks?
This is one of the toughest parts of Dynasty fantasy football, and it's also open to interpretation. For me, I'm going to value a 1.01 like a top 15, 20 overall player. Let's look at the guys that I personally had 101 the last 2 years in Nuke Hopkins and Mike Evans. If you took either of those guys at 101 in their respective rookie drafts, you're doing cartwheels right now, and you got in on the ground floor. you didn't pay what you're going to pay for either of them right now. So the 101, I mean, to me is just as valuable as, like I said, a top 15, 20 guy. There are tons of guys out there, Torrey Smith, Percy Harvin, Emmanuel Sanders, guys that are proven. But proven to be what? Mid-range wide receiver 2s and 3s. So, like I said, it's a very, very tough thing to do to evaluate rookie picks. But, obviously the higher you get in the first round, the more value that pick's going to have. But even the middle round rookie picks, hold some value for sure. And future first is that well. I've already got my eye towards the 2016 class. I picked up 2 2016 firsts this week. It's one of those deals where you're going to be throwing darts or buying lottery tickets. Get as many as you can because you're getting them on the ground floor. You're going to be getting these guys as cheap as you're ever going to get them is at their rookie draft slot. So now that I've skirted around that question, let's jump in and save me.
By the way, hells yeah on those 2016 draft picks. I'm all about some Marquez North and some Tyler Boyd. For me, I was really interested to see how you guys answered this question because I don't necessarily equate a certain pick with a certain range of, say ADP or anything. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, I'm going out and evaluating these guys on my own because, say I'm going to take this 101. I'm going to equate this 101 to Prospect X, Todd Gurley. Now I'm going to take Todd Gurley, I'm going to evaluate the hell out of him, and I'm going to say, hey, okay, well, I take these 10 players over him. Now let's look at these next 5. And once it starts getting muddy on which I'd want to take over him, that's the range where he fits for me. Then I move on to my 102. Where would Amari Cooper fit? Where would Kevin White fit? And I essentially do a personal, I essentially compare my rookie board and see where each of these individual guys would fit. Now, it's not really an exact science, and it depends a lot on what my evaluation is. And, I don't get paid, so it's obviously not that good, but that's what works for me. Scott, I'm interested to see how you go about it.
So I definitely am in the middle. I agree with Tyler, and you usually equate it to around the same level of 10 to 15, 20 range. But I also agree that you need to look at who that guy is that you're drafting at that draft, or that you would think you might get at that draft position. So this year, if you got the 1.01, I agree. You look and see where you value Gurley. But at the same time, I've been looking back into my startup drafts and the rookie drafts. So the rookie draft from the year before and the startup drafts the next year. And there's always going to be those guys that went later in that first round of the rookie draft that go higher, like OBJ is going right now. He's going like top 5, I think, in startup drafts. So there's not always going to be the same range for each player or each pick. I think you definitely need to evaluate the player that you're getting at that pick, or you're thinking you're going to get at that pick, or hoping to get, however you want to phrase that. But I do think that it's important to look at how the last draft class went and see, okay, so how early are all these rookies going now over these established veterans? I mean, if you look at, as Tyler mentioned, Hopkins, I mean, he's going late first, early second round in startup drafts now, and that was a 1.01 2 years ago. I think these are important things to look at because then you can kind of start to value it. I mean, Watkins is going right in that same range, late first, early second. So I think that at the very least you should be looking for a top 10 to 15 guy. I think that is a reasonable range to accept out of a 1.01 no matter who it is, but I think it's even more important to look at who you have and figure out where you value him, like Drew was saying, between the players that are already out there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And this is a time of year where I'm I'm either moving draft picks or I'm acquiring draft picks. There are going to be draft picks involved in most of the trades that I'm doing this time of year. So I'm trying to find guys that I like. Where do I think they're going to go? Like, all right, Jalen Strong. I love Jalen Strong. I made no bones about it. Where do I think he's going to go? I think he's going to end up going in the 5 to 8 range. So if I can give up a package, something including the guys I mentioned earlier, Torrey, Percy, Emmanuel Sanders, plus something else to get in a spot where I can get that guy that I like. Yeah, that's a move that I like to make. I like to look at it like this: do I want Torrey Smith, who I know what he's going to give me, and it's nothing great. He's going to be a solid starter for me, or do I want to roll the dice on that a Jalen Strong turns into AJ Green, Julio Jones? More often than not, I'm going to roll the dice on the guy that's going to give me the higher ceiling. So right now it's all about trying to position myself within these drafts to get the players that I like, not the draft picks that I like, but the guy that I want. And that's what I'm trying to do, at this time of year, is maneuver myself into that spot of the first round where I'm going to get individual players that I covet.
I like it. And you're right. It's all about the upside. That's the whole point of the draft. I mean, you're drafting these guys to rebuild your teams. That's why the draft is inverse of standings, because these draft picks are supposed to be able to rebuild your team. That's and that's why I base so much of it off of players, because signing X amount of picks to a certain range is nice, but if look back at the 2013 draft, there was not as many players going around that I was going to be confident to rebuild my team. I was not trusting Tavon Austin to go be my wide receiver 1.
What? He's got the size.
You know what? And you know what? He got to play with Schottenheimer. I should have trusted the system. That's my bad. But it depends on the draft class. So pick rankings have to fluctuate from year to year. It's not a solid thing you can just take from year to year. But do you guys have anything else you wanted to hit on for it?
No, I think we hit it all well.
I think another thing that you can look at is inverse of what I said earlier about acquiring picks to move into the range you want. Now, let's say you're in a range where you don't like players. Let's say, like for me personally, I think from around the 109 to early second round is kind of no man's land. I don't see a lot of separation between those prospects at that spot. I've moved a ton of those draft picks because that first round draft pick, it just looks sexy, I guess you could say. I'm throwing in a first, but I'm throwing in a first on a guy that in a first round pick that I would spend on a guy that I don't really like, to get the better end of a trade. I made a few trades this year where I got studs in return for my first round pick. I had a couple trades, one where I got Julio, one where I got Dez. And now I'm sitting here without a first, but I don't really care. Who am I passing? I'm passing Tevin Coleman. Cool with that. So, it goes both ways. And like I said, it's definitely open to interpretation, and there's no exact science as far as valuing draft picks versus the current player pool, but it's all part of the fun.
Yeah. I'm going to disagree with you slightly there. I'm all about, moving the picks, especially, when there's that dead zone. But I wouldn't be looking to move them this early. I'd be looking to move them closer to draft time, especially once those players land somewhere, they start getting that real hype to them. And then the value of those picks just artificially gets inflated. So, I'm all about moving, like you said. I think selling them now is just kind of, it's selling them before their value hits its peak. But at the same time...
And that's fair, definitely.
We all just talked over each other. That was wonderful.
Everybody at the same time. That was amazing. I don't think we've done that before. It's a new record. Woo!
I feel like we should write up a banner for that. That was good. I can also see wanting to make the trades early if you're trying to pick up a guy that might go in somewhere in free agency, or if you're trying to make a move for a situation to get rid of a player that might be in a situation that could get ruined by free agency. But Scott, I'll go ahead and let you talk because you wanted to talk and we didn't let you.
I was just going to say I agree with both ends. I think that if you're just trying to get the most value out of your pick and you don't have anything in particular you're trying to go after, waiting longer until players have already been drafted and almost right before your rookie draft actually starts can usually work up a lot more hype and get a pick that maybe would have gotten less value to get a little bit higher towards the end of that pre-draft time. But I also think that trading early is never bad. I think that you can move those picks around and then move back into that spot for even less somehow, because people are trading so much that you can actually move a pick around 4 times between a bunch of players and end up with the same pick you lost and actually have gained 3 players out of it or 2 players out of it or something. So I think it's never bad to try and trade those picks. If you feel like you're getting good value for it, go ahead and go after it, I think. But I think if all you're trying to do is just get value because you don't want that pick at all, or you don't want a pick in that round at all or in that range, it's okay to go ahead and go early, but I would wait longer because you can get more value as the draft gets closer.
That's a good point. I like that. All right, now.
Your turn.
Everyone stop. Tyler wants to talk.
Do I want to talk? Let's talk. Yeah,
All right.
Scott hit it well, man. That's a great point. I actually reacquired one of my first round picks this week that I dealt off months ago. And in the end, I came out slightly ahead. But like I said, this time of year, I'm throwing out trade offers all over the place in most of my leagues. And picks are usually involved, either coming or going. So.
Gotcha. All right. I think we hit that pretty good.
All right, so I guess move on to the next question. Came from S. Woodman Roxu. Does the depth of this year's running back class matter if there are so few positions at RB? In addition, how will guys like Johnson and Abdullah fare in an NFL where small backs are seen as complementary? Drew, take the lead on this one.
I think what he means by there's so few positions at running back is that there's so few openings for starting running backs. I think this class is going to create openings for starting running backs that weren't there before, just because of how talented this class is. So I think that kind of covers that first one for me. As for guys like Johnson and Abdullah, I disagree with the idea that small backs are seen as complementary. I think the majority of small backs have skill sets that are seen as complementary. And that's where the idea gets twisted. I think Abdullah and Johnson have the ability to carry the majority of the load. Duke Johnson is going to need a guy behind him who can take short yardage work, but short of that, he can be essentially an every down back, in my opinion. If he can get like a Mike Tolbert to work with, then he's golden. And Mike Tolbert's not going to steal carries from him outside of that. I think Abdullah really can just work on his own. I don't think he needs to be in any sort of committee. I think he has enough of a skill set on his own to function. Scott, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm pretty close to how you feel about a lot of this here. I think that the depth of this year running back class doesn't matter because there's so few positions at running back. I think
there's always going to be openings at running backs. I think that running backs are often injured, and they just need fill-ins, or they need someone to constantly get them gas so they can get short yardage, or so many teams are going to running back by committee and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that that really affects the class at all. So I think that answers that first question. And then small backs being seen as complementary. I mean, I'm not really sure what you're defining as a small back in this sense. I mean, was Ray Rice considered a complementary back? As C.J. Anderson, I mean, I know he hasn't played much, but was he seen as just a complementary back? I feel like that there's lots of backs that are small and quick and can't be power backs. That's seen as more a complementary back. I agree with Drew's idea that their skill sets is more seen as complementary than their actual, just because of their size, that they're small, and that's why they're seen as complementary. I think that some of those guys, Johnson and Abdullah, I wouldn't say them exactly, but I think that there's definitely players that are smaller that can still be seen as an every down back. I know Abdullah can catch the ball fairly well, so I think that it really depends on the team that they go to and their situation, but I don't think that just because of your size you're seen as automatically being a complementary back. What do you think, Tyler?
I think you guys hit it pretty well. And another thing, I'm just kind of jotting down some names here. We're about to have a mass exodus of some older running backs that have been fantasy relevant for as long as I can remember. Steven Jackson, Frank Gore, AP, Lynch to a degree, Fred Jackson, D'Angelo Williams. I don't even know why I wrote him down. He's a bum.
Jackson
Always has been. What's that now?
I said Fred Jackson won't retire. He'll play till he's 60.
Yeah, Fred Jackson can't be killed. So, I mean, there's going to be spots created. Yeah, Reggie Bush. I mean, the list goes on and on. So there are going to be spots created. These guys are going to find spots. And as far as if they land in complementary roles, I mean, you guys play in leagues with me. I'm the driver of the zero RB bus. Give me a guy that's in a complementary role. Give me a Danny Woodhead. Give me a Pierre Thomas. I'll fill a running back stable full of guys that don't do anything but catch 5 or 6 balls a game, and be perfectly happy with it. So yeah, the depth of the class, does it matter? Relative to how few positions there are in the league. Yes and no. I mean, it does, but the fact that very few teams just go with a workhorse 3-down running back year after year after year just leads me to believe that a lot of these guys are going to stick somewhere, and they're going to stick on our rosters as fantasy relevant running backs as well.
Yeah, I mean, look at 2014's wide receiver class. Look at how deep that class is. There wasn't necessarily that many openings for starters, but because the class is so deep and talented, they forced their way into as starters. I'm not saying this running back class is that level of talent, but the NFL's running back level of talent isn't as high as the wide receivers are either. And as far as NFL small backs, I love what Matt Waldman says. Is running back is one of his favorite positions to scout, because you can legitimately be any size and be successful. You can be Brandon Jacobs and be 6'4", 500 million pounds, or you can be MJD and be 5'7". MJD was shorter than I am.
Which is short, by the way, people.
Yeah, I'm a munchkin. I mean, and MJD was a workhorse back. So, size is not all it's cracked up to be, especially for running backs. Their skill set is, much more what needs to be evaluated for that position than anything. Scott, you had anything else you wanted to touch on before we moved on?
No, I think we hit it good. Running back by committee. Small guys aren't always going to be complimentary.
All right. Tyler, anything?
I think we got it.
All right. We can move on to my rant of the week then. I've noticed some bullshit in the subreddit lately. A lot of people are starting to act like me, and according to Scott, and they're being condescending assholes. The subreddit's supposed to be somewhere you can come, ask questions, have a discussion, and even if you don't know what you're talking about, or even if you don't know as much, you can come there to learn. But if you're coming and talking to them like, addressing them like they're stupid, people aren't going to want to talk. It's going to stifle discussion. Not everyone knows as much as you do. Not everyone has as much experience as you do. Why be an asshole? I mean, I know it's the internet and that's what you're supposed to do, but why? I mean, really, why? What is there to gain? I mean, you sit at home with a smile on your face like, I was a jerk to this guy. Good for me. Like, fuck that. Like, why? I would rather have a stimulating discussion on the subreddit with a guy who doesn't know as much, and he, after 2 days worth of discussion, he introduces a new idea to the subreddit that I hadn't considered before. That's way better than getting my jollies off of just being a dick to somebody. Like, grow the fuck up. Now, granted, I am yelling at a lot of you that are doing exactly what I would hope you'd do and are having these stimulating, good adult conversations. So I'm yelling at a very select few of you. So I'm sorry to those of you who are not being condescending assholes. So excuse my language. For those of you that are being condescending assholes, quit being a bitch. And rant. Oh, and I have a second rant. For all of you pancake lovers out there, get with the time.
Waffles are where it's at.
Exactly. Waffles have a syrup trap. Pancakes are immediately trapped in this world where you get dry pancakes in the middle and you choke on them and die. Waffles are better. If you like pancakes, we need to send you to camps. Happy camps. Where you're re-educated. Hello, Delilah. My puppy has come to visit. She doesn't like it when I yell. Alright, guys. You got any last parting shots?
I think you wrapped it up, man. Team Pancake.
Right, Team
Waffles.
Pancake. Team Pancake should be in concentration camps.
Oh, I love it.
Alright, for those of you who don't know, the community mock drafts are going on the subreddit. We're trying to get these startup drafts to go longer than, 3 or 4 rounds. I don't think there's a whole lot else going on in the subreddit right now.
Good luck.
So, this has been the Dynasty Playbook, Dynasty FS dedicated podcast. I've been your host, Drew. You can find me on Reddit at EAF_Marine and on Twitter at YourDodsonNFL. And with me have been my co-hosts, Tyler and Scott. You can find Tyler on Reddit at Barrels and Scott on Reddit at Stewie35. Thanks for joining us. Have a good week.